Now introducing your 2015 Illini Drive All-Stars. The sophomore social media guru from Naperville, Illinois, Mr. Jeff Omer. Second, the senior co-host and one half of the Twin Towers from St. Charles, Illinois, Steve Bourbon. Third, his counterpart, the always sarcastic and a fan of no team on the show, senior co-host Sam Sherman. Last but not least, the senior producer from Chicago, Illinois, Torrance Sorrell.
Hello and welcome to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. Hope everyone's having a great day. I'm Sam Sherman, joined alongside my co-host, producer, and social media guru. Right now, across from me, I got Steve Bourbon. How you doing today, Steve?
Yeah, pretty good. Can't complain.
You got a hat on. I like it.
I like to wear hats from time to time.
2006 conference champ.
You know, it's a little dusty. It's
the
Bears conference championship hat from 2006.
Yeah.
So that's when it was back when it was the Bears with the defense.
Back when they had a defense.
Back when it was a defense. Yeah.
Lovie Smith was stoic as ever.
To my left, I have JJ Wilson. How you doing today, JJ?
Pretty good. Glad to hear my name in the rundown.
Pretty cool. It only took like 2 months.
I know, right?
It's
Quick
like
correction. JJ is a junior. I believe it's
I want to milk my time in college as long as I can.
Yeah,
so.
but I think he said he was a senior in there. But that's okay. You'll eventually be a senior.
I will. I'm going to be a senior pretty soon.
Well, that's the plan, right?
Yeah, exactly. As long as everything goes well.
To my right, I got the man, the myth, the legend, the producer, Torrance Sorrell.
What's going on, man? I'm digging that little whatever you call it you got on.
My shirt.
There are
It's warm out. It's like 70 out. I can wear a shirt like. Well, I mean, it's long sleeve, but I would like a shorter sleeve version of this.
No, that's better than that one sweater you had, Steve. You
know,
or something.
It was like a burnt orange and a dark blue, and it was
also to my right, I have my guy, social media guru. Jeff Omer. Last week you said that you weren't such a big fan of the my guy thing.
Yeah, well, just because you didn't seem so excited to call me your guy, you're just
no, you're. I don't know what you told me.
I want to be your guy. Sam.
You're my guy. You are my guy. Today on Illini Drive, we're talking about. It's really a bracket-filled, like Torrance said, it is a bracket-filled day for us. We're going to be talking. Not only here's a special treat when Illinois fans listening, when your team makes the NIT.
We do NIT brackets.
We do NIT brackets too, but for people who don't really care about the NIT, which might be a lot of you, or maybe not, we're going to talk some NCAA tournament as well. We filled out brackets. We got all of our brackets set. We're gonna talk about Illinois in the NIT, in their bracket, which is the NIT bracket, and then all the other teams, the good teams essentially in the nation, who played in the or are going to be playing
actual tournament.
In the NCAA tournament. We've got more talk today. We're going to be actually bringing on a former host of Illini Drive. Alum, Max Tane, one of my favorite guys to come out of the Daily Illini family, the Illini media family.
The Illini pipeline.
The Illini pipeline, a good one. And so we're going to be bringing on Max to talk some Big Ten in the tournament and just some general NCAA tournament action. And then we're going to close out the show with everyone's favorite topic, or Steve, at least it's your favorite topic, NBA and the Bulls.
Anytime we can sneak NBA talk, I think our Torrance and I are happy.
And then I'm going to throw in a little segment at the end where we talk about what White Sox hot prospect Carlos Rodon. Just kidding.
Okay.
Right. He did pitch today. He had 3 strikeouts, but whatever. So, before we go into NIT talk, I actually wanted to talk about a quote. Well, it's still NIT talk, but it was a quote. John Gross spoke to the media last night, late, 9 o'clock, I believe. And he spoke to them about the NIT, and he was asked a question, and it was essentially like, is your team going to be ready for the NIT? And this is what he said.
We'll see. I'm not playing. I'm coaching in the tournament.
He would then kind of go on to talk about how the tournament's changed from the NIT, that is, from when he coached years ago and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, out of that first, we kind of talked about this, Stephen and JJ as well. That's something right there when he goes, we'll see. That's one thing. But then he goes on to say, I don't play, I'm the coach. That's something there that I would have to think, and you kind of brought this up, Steve. What if Tim Beckman over on Illinois football said that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw that initially on Twitter, and the only thing was on will his team be ready to play? It was we'll see. So I was like, all right, that's out of context or whatever. But then you listen to more of it. He says, I'm not playing, I'm just coaching. And yeah, I feel like if friend of our show, Tim, he's our friend, Tim Beckman, Illini football coach, had said something along those lines, then. Yeah, I think he would be getting hammered for it. I think it kind of shows, even though he didn't say, you read between the lines, and it's like he's like, well, I don't know, we'll see if our team is ready. And normally Gross is pretty good about, we'll make sure they're ready to go. We'll look at some stuff, and prepare and all that stuff. But he really did not sound confident at all that his team, would be ready to go for kind of probably a disappointing finish and ending up in the NIT.
And JJ, I mean, you look at this, and to say something like, this is nothing terrible, but it's still, this is a guy who's usually been very good with the media in terms of, not saying the wrong things. When you go out there and you say something like, oh, well, I'm just the coach, I'm not going to buy into that. That's not a, I don't care if it's the NIT, it's the tournament, or like the CIT, all these other
CBI.
CBI.
Yeah.
You know what?
Is a thing.
These are all tournaments. This is more opportunities for the young guys to play, even if it's not the big dance, it's a dance. And however fun or exciting that may be, and to kind of just have sort of a meh feeling about it. I'm not so sure kind of where that kind of leaves the program right now.
Kind of reminds me of homecoming versus prom. I mean, when you're a junior and a senior, you really only care about going to prom because that's where all the fun, expensive stuff comes in. You get to wear nice clothes and everything like that, limos if you go all out. But anyways, for this team, I was actually there last night talking to Gross, and Gross has been running on a little low of sleep because he called the loss to Michigan the worst of the season, which I think most people would agree that was one of the, if not the worst showing they've had this year. And then he had his daughter born Friday, and then building up to the selection show. I mean, they knew they were going to the NIT. There was no question. But, talking to the players after that Michigan game, they don't seem like they want it very much. I mean, I can't say that I blame them. It is disappointing, but at what point do you kind of cut off the disappointment and go, okay, well, let's go out there and prove that we're capable of competing with some of these teams?
And it's hard, like you spend all season trying to get to the goal of, get to the NCAA tournament, and then you see, 7 teams from your conference make it, 11 teams from your schedule, as we went over, made it, and Illinois doesn't. Yeah, it's a pretty big letdown. And the only reason the NIT quote unquote matters is because Illinois' core is still those 5 sophomores. Mm-hmm. They're still a pretty young team without the exception of they've got the 3 seniors. But I mean they any high competitive games they can get, they need to play, and they need to play hard. Now, I'm not saying that they won't, but it's hard to get fired up about an NIT bid.
Fair. It is hard to get fired up about the NIT. I mean, the NIT is basically thought of as a joke. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
It's
the consolation prize.
It's a consolation prize, and it's not even, Minnesota won the NIT last year. Minnesota didn't even make the NIT this year. And that right there goes to show, among many other examples, why it's sort of a joke. But you know what? This is what they deserved. They didn't deserve the tournament. In fact, even though it seemed like they were maybe just a win away, they had plenty of opportunities to get that win this season.
Especially in those last 2 games.
Plenty of opportunities. You want to go back to Oregon, you want to go back to Michigan, you want to go back to Nebraska, that ugly, ugly game against Nebraska earlier in the year, or these last 2 games with Purdue and then Michigan again. They didn't deserve the tournament. And they're basically playing exactly where they should be playing, which isn't the NIT, it's just not the tournament. And so they kind of have this mentality of I don't really feel like playing in this, if that's, again, I don't know for sure, but if that's what they're going in with, sorry, but you put yourself there.
And I think it could be kind of a humbling experience. I mean, Illinois was 5-12 against the RPI top 100. Against real teams, like for all intents and purposes, tournament teams, Illinois was not good. They didn't have any bad losses, really. I mean, the Nebraska loss ended up being bad. But,
pretty bad, yeah.
But you know what? Maybe, they're not as good as people think they were. I mean, a lot of people this year thought, yeah, they should make the NCAA tournament this year. Now, things didn't go anywhere according to plan. Starting all the way back with Tracy Abrams, the transfers were disappointing at times. Rivante, injury suspension.
Yeah.
One of them isn't even here anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but with all those things, I mean, it is kind of a little humbling. You're
Sure.
in NITs 2 years in a row.
Well, and one of the most interesting facts too is, I mean, you think about Michigan. They played them 3 times. They lost twice. Michigan wasn't even good enough to go to the NIT.
Yeah. They
So-
turned down a CBI bid. Yeah.
Exactly. So digest that for a second and realize that they just pummeled the Illini in the Big Ten tournament first round when the tournament was on the line.
This is a bit of a shameless plug for a column that's coming out tomorrow.
This is so shameless.
But it has to do with I mean, it is relevant to what we're saying in the sense that the team, I think it should be or needs to be that humbling experience. Then you talk about the fan base for a second. That a lot of fans felt like started talking about some of the teams that made the tournament and saying blanket statements like Illinois is better than that team or Illinois is better than this team that made the tournament. And you know what? I'm here to say it right now. They're not.
Nope.
They're not. If they were better, or then they'd have to be in the tournament for you to even start that discussion. They didn't make the tournament. They were 19-13. Like you said, Steve, they really weren't that good. And does that mean that going forward, that Gross can't make have this team improve and they can make the tournament next year? I mean, they might. But the fan base, I think, needs to take a step back and realize right now Illinois basketball isn't very good.
Yeah, I mean, back-to-back NITs, and then next year, I mean, it's going to be tough. Again, I know we disagree a little bit on this, but I mean, I think losing Egwu and Rice and Starks even, I mean, I think they're going to be a little starved for scoring, and they're going to miss, some of their post play without Egwu.
And
so I don't necessarily know who can for sure step up and fill that.
And we looked at this a little bit before the Purdue game at the end of the season. The way Jalen Tate has played these past few games, a little bit Michigan was a little bit better, but Jalen Tate has got to get it going. I mean, Tracy Abrams will be back next year. Jalen Coleman-Lands will be there. But Jalen Tate is going to be a vet, and he's going to be a junior. He's going to be technically considered a veteran, and you are going to need him to play at a high level every game.
You need any sort of respect from the defense for his jump shot, because right now it is embarrassing how far teams are playing off him when he's off ball.
Yeah.
I mean, they are completely disregarding him, and that just messes up everything.
And then going ahead and looking back at that quote, at what point do you think that Gross should be taking responsibility for their mentality? If you're in the NIT 2 postseasons in a row, at what point does he have to tell them, hey, this is not the attitude you can have approaching this?
I mean, it's right now. And the reason it's right now is because in that first game of the Big Ten tournament, it's Michigan when they got clobbered. After the game, he sounded as surprised as anybody. And, okay, fair, I think everyone was a little bit surprised at that outcome. But you're the coach. You're with those guys. Everyone else should be surprised. You're the one that should have answers, or at the very least, not just go and say, well, I'm surprised as anyone, or that was a surprising outcome. We practiced well. I'm sick of this practicing well.
Yeah.
Practice clearly means, yes, practice is important, but a good practice does not equal a good game, and a bad practice does not equal a bad game. Because how often have we heard Gross say, well, we didn't practice that well after a win, or after a loss, say that they did practice well. So that we could throw out the door. But just the fact that, he or the team, the team then going back to him, was not near ready for that Michigan game is inexcusable.
It almost looked like they didn't have any of the things that he preaches, the toughness and togetherness. And I think they haven't had that ever since, the incumbent seniors of Bruce Weber left. Since that Brandon Paul, Tyler Griffey, DJ Richardson team, they played hard.
A team less talented than the ones that Gross has had, or at least this season.
I would say definitely
just pure, just talent.
Yeah, but this team, they. A lot of times this season when they got hit in the mouth late in games, they didn't respond.
Nope.
Even going back to games we didn't even mention yet, against Miami and Villanova, they got the score down to 2, but late in that second half. But then as soon as they hit any sort of adversity, they would fold. And, we saw that in the Michigan game. They came back with a run early in the first half, and then Michigan ends on, I don't even know, it was a 20-5 run,
yeah.
something worse than that.
Yeah.
I think they need to kind of get back to almost culturally where Gross wants them to be, tough and together and all those things, and not just say it, actually show it on the court.
Gross came out at the beginning of the season, in the preseason, and was talking about how, he wanted them all to have the 10 toes in the water, was his little metaphor for the season. I don't think all 10 toes have been in the water since Baylor.
There are dry toes out there.
Exactly.
And even that Baylor game, I mean, that now even looks kind of fluky. I mean,
A little bit, yeah.
I would say, I was saying this to Steve yesterday, after the NIT bid was announced. I think, looking back at that Baylor game and how Baylor had progressed throughout the season to become one of the stronger teams in the nation, if they played tomorrow, they played like 10 times, I said, I don't know if Illinois wins one of those games.
Well, it's like we always say, because you love talking about Purdue because you're a big Purdue fan, but Purdue had 2 losses to Gardner-Webb in North Florida in December.
Yeah.
If they played them tomorrow, Purdue wins the majority of the time. I mean, teams progress. So for how much credit Illinois got for beating a top 10 RPI team in Baylor, well, at the time, Baylor wasn't that form of themselves.
It's not what you do, it's when you do it.
Well,
and I mean, and that's Purdue's a good example there. They got smacked in the mouth twice early in the season, and at that point, when you have 2 losses like that, you could pretty much take away any tournament hope, even that early in the season. With 2 poor quality losses like that, not just poor quality, like terrible losses.
Like 170 RPI.
And what did they do? Not a supremely talented Purdue team by any means. What did they do? They responded by having like really the hottest second half of any team. Really, after those games, they were excellent.
Yep.
And as strange as that is, they were excellent. But yes, the NIT is a bit of a laugher in some ways, but that we still filled out some brackets.
Oh, yeah.
Because Illinois is in the NIT.
Yeah.
And
shocker, I think we have some differing opinions.
we do have some differing opinions. So I want to
mostly because I look at Sam. I already looked at Salmon's and I look over at JJ's, and it's only half filled out. So that's kind of a wild card over there on what kind of picks he's coming up with.
Well, I want to start out. Can we start out just? I mean, there's a lot. There's not as many teams as there are in the NCAA tournament, but I think we should start with like the Elite 8 or the semifinals as they call them in the NIT.
Let's do the final 4.
Or do you just want to go Final 4?
Well, it's up to you guys.
Let's go.
Yeah, why don't you guys go and take it?
Let's go Final 4.
Final 4.
I want to go Final 4.
Right.
What does your Final 4 look like?
Mine is Louisiana Tech, Richmond, Vanderbilt, and Illinois State.
Oh.
It's the best team in Illinois.
Okay.
Shots fired.
I don't disagree.
Well, but you do.
I mean, I don't disagree with the best team in Illinois, but my Final 4 is looking like this: Texas A&M, Money Manziel, Iona.
Ever dangerous.
You know what? This is the reason I picked Iona, because I always hear about Iona, throughout the season of I feel like Seth Davis tweets about Iona a lot.
Okay.
And
26-win team.
26 wins. I mean, that's something. Then I have Iona. Then I have Illinois State, best team in Illinois, and then I have Illinois on the other side of the track.
I love we just spent 18 minutes bashing Illinois for pretty much the entire time, and yet you still have Illinois making the NIT run.
Yeah. Now that I look at this,
Defend yourself.
I'll defend myself in a moment. What do you got, JJ?
This is going to probably upset Illinois fans because they're not going to like that this is, I think, might happen again. I think Miami is going to beat Illinois, and I have them in my Final 4. I have Temple up top. As far as the other end, I think that I would pick Murray State over ISU to the Final 4, and then Vanderbilt as well. I think that would be my Final 4.
Okay.
But it kind of gets to the point where I don't know a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and
as far
I'll
as
get back
watching
to that in
them
a second.
regularly.
But let's go on to now the finals. Who do you have playing in the finals now?
I have Richmond, the Spiders.
Spiders, yeah.
What are they, A10? Or
Yes.
A10,
yes.
A10 Pride. Richmond and ISU.
Nice. I have ISU as well in there, and I got the Illini.
The all Illinois invades MSG.
Illinois invades. Yeah, I'll be there. No, probably not. I won't be
If
there.
Illinois makes it, we'll be there. We'll do a Illini
Sure.
podcast.
Yeah, a podcast live from Madison Square Garden. What about you, JJ?
I think that I'm going to pick Murray State and Miami.
Oof.
Murray
Yep.
State and Miami. Okay, the Racers, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah,
Murray
nice.
State Racers, yeah.
And out of-
ATV was very upset they didn't make it tournament.
Do you guys have NIT or do you?
I got both brackets.
Both. Okay, I'm gonna ask for your winners. So now we're gonna go around with the winners of the NIT. The NIT National Invitation Tournament champions. Who you got, Steve?
I got Richmond. I like basically on mascot name alone, and also they beat Purdue by like 20 a couple years ago. So that's a thing. That
Social media guru, my guy Jeff Omer. What you got?
I gotta go with Illinois, Sam.
Okay.
I have some faith.
I like that
Omer.
pick. I like that pick. What do you got, Torrance?
I got Colorado State.
Ooh, nice.
Sleeper.
Okay.
Nice.
Nobody got it.
The
I
one seed-
believe current Big Ten coach, Nebraska coach Tim Miles used to coach at Colorado State, if I'm not mistaken.
used to coach there or does now?
Tim Miles?
Oh, Tim Miles. I thought you were talking about their former. Oh no, yeah.
Can we get a check on that? Can you find out, Jeff, if that's true? I think he coached at Colorado State. I might be wrong, but really, who cares? My champion, actually, no, JD, you go next.
I'm going to take Miami.
Not bad.
And my only evidence for that is how Miami has played against Illinois in the past. That is the only evidence I'm submitting to the court at this time.
Fair.
That's all the evidence I need.
They used to be a top 15 team. They're going to be like in there somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
And my champion, the University of Illinois, Illini.
How would you like?
But here's why. Because much like the points on whose line is it anyway, the NIT champion doesn't matter.
Are we betting for this? Any money on the table? Any type of wages?
No money as much as maybe some push-ups.
I think legally
I don't think anyone wants to see Sam push it.
legally and ethically speaking, I'm not allowed to bet on anything that Illinois is involved in, which is great that they didn't make the NCAA tournament because that will perpetuate my gambling issues.
Guys, there's we'll get to the real talk with the brackets soon enough when we're talking about the real tournament, the NCAA tournament. And I'm sorry if I offend any of the NIT players or teams because it's not a real tournament.
You have nothing to apologize for. It's like if you're offended by it, then make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just trying to help these teams out. I'm just trying to
fire under them, Sam.
just lighten the fire.
And what Gross said last night was interesting too. He said, we're glad we had the opportunity, but are we disappointed? Of course, because I think any team in the NIT would rather be in the NCAA tournament. So that kind of apathy kind of comes into play.
Well, as your confidence, you and Jeff's confidence with this Illinois team, I am a little bit less confident. Mainly because I see them losing to Alabama.
Which they might. Tuscaloosa, Crimson Tide. That's a tough place to play.
They just hired Anthony Grant, their coach,
and I think they're going to be
Is he interested in coming to Champaign? All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we will have former Illini Drive host and overall great guy Max Tane coming on to talk about the big one, the big dance, the NCAA tournament.
Hey, this is Matt Spiegel from 670 The Score. You're listening to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1, Mondays at 6.
Hello and welcome back to Illini Drive on WPGU 107.1. We return here with a special guest, a very special guest. We're going to be talking about the NCAA tournament. No more NIT talk. Sorry, Illinois fans, but we are moving on.
I appreciate it.
Joining us on the phone lines is former Illini Drive host Max Tane. Max, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, guys. How you doing?
Great. Thanks so much for coming on. By the way, it's always a pleasure to talk.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the weather's great up here in Chicago, and you guys caught me on a good off day. The 120 sports flow has died down a little bit, but yeah, I'm ready to talk some tournament.
Well, the weather is certainly a nice thing. I mean, like just the fact that I didn't remember what 70 degrees felt like. It was really an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's pretty weird. I had to dust off the shorts that I put on today. They were just in the drawer for so long.
Well, yeah. So we were in the last segment. We were talking about some NIT as that's all the Illini will hope to achieve for the rest of the season, obviously. But we're moving on to the NCAA tournament. I want to open up because really like the storyline throughout the entire season has been Kentucky, the Kentucky Wildcats, the undefeated season. on the line, really. Well, regular season has already occurred, but now with the postseason, and I mean, most people are saying, I'd say pretty much everyone I've talked to has already, crowned the Wildcats as the NCAA champions. Would you, are you right there with them, or do you think there's any chance they can that there might be another winner?
Yeah, I think Kentucky right now is the odds-on favorite. I think Vegas has the Eagles to win the tournament, which isn't really going out of the list or anything. I mean, they're a good team. They've shown that they can win on the road. They can win a tight game. They can fully outcast the guys. Everyone's seeing that. We all know about the players they have. Recruits, freshmen, parents. I think there are two scenarios where you can beat Kentucky. If you shoot the ball fantastic, you probably make about 10 to 12 threes a game. I think you can take down Kentucky for sure. And if you have the size to back them, I think you can also play with them. I think two teams that really can match up well with them would be a Final Four matchup. I think Wisconsin can match up well with them just because of the team basketball they play. I'm not saying they have necessarily the size to go one-on-one with them, but I think Arizona is a team that a lot of people haven't really seen that much because they're that team that plays that late game on the West Coast. Not many people have seen them that much this year, but they got really hot in the Pac-12 tournament. They have a lot of size. They got a couple of 7-footers that can match up with Kentucky big. They got a freshman All-American in Stanley Johnson that can go get his own shot whenever he wants. And they're led by T.J. McConnell, who he might not be the best defensive point guard, but he's smart. And probably averages about a double-double in over the last 5 games. I think the Wildcats could be a team that could challenge Kentucky if they get by Wisconsin in that regional.
I was going to say, in that regional, who do you like, Wisconsin or Arizona?
Yeah, I would probably take Arizona right now. I think they're playing a little bit better. I think down the stretch, and I think they're deeper. I think once they decided to bring in a taller lineup, and they put Gabe York on the bench, so they end up starting Rondé Hollis-Jefferson in his place. I think that's a lot of size, that's a lot of physicality. Keep in mind, they're not the best offensive team in the country, but they defend like anybody. And Sean Miller is part of that mod coaching tree that kind of John Gross comes from. So you kind of know the defensive principles that he stands for. They're tough, they get under your skin, and I think they're really starting to play some of their best basketball at the right time. I think they have a pretty favorable draw to find their way into that Elite Eight final, and definitely that would be a revenge game against Wisconsin. Remember that Wisconsin was the team that beat them and keeps them away from the Final Four last year. I think they're going to come in with that chip on their shoulder. And I mean, all credit to Wisconsin. I mean, you saw how good they were this year in the Big Ten, but you saw how the committee didn't really value the Big Ten that much yesterday. Maryland gets 4 seed, Iowa 7 seed, Indiana the 10 seed, even though a lot of people thought that they were kind of teetering on the bubble. The value of the Big Ten, other than Wisconsin, was pretty low in the eyes of the committee based on the eye test. So I think that Arizona would be the team that can pass that test and go to the top of the West.
Well then, assuming that Kentucky gets out of the championship, which I think most people would make a safe bet, what would you do for the other side? Who do you think can face off against Kentucky in that final showdown?
You know, it's interesting. I haven't really sat down and kind of perused the bracket, but I just kind of look at teams that can cause Kentucky matchup issues. And then at the same time, there's plenty of storylines. I don't really think Duke's a team that can make the Final Four. I just think ever since they dismissed Rasheed Suleiman mid-season, they haven't been as deep. You saw that Jahlil Okafor was getting tired at the end of that ACC tournament. I really think they should have managed his minutes more and kind of started favoring getting ready for the tournament. I think Iowa State is playing some of their best basketball right now, and I think they can make a run to the Final Four strictly just based on coaching. I mean, Fred Hoiberg is one of the best coaches in the country when it comes to finding a matchup that he likes. And then I think this is one of Gonzaga's best teams they've ever had. And it would be a pretty full circle story for a guy like Kyle Wiltshire, who saw the high and the low of Kentucky, transfers back home to Gonzaga, and now could be an All-American and probably one of the deepest teams in that field. And then at the top of the bracket, you look at that Villanova Virginia side. I got to see Villanova up close in person when they played Illinois at the Garden. And they're a special team that they have a lot of guards. They spread you out. They can hit threes, which is one of the keys, I think, to beating Kentucky. But that draw is pretty hard. They got to get by teams like an NC State or LSU and Northern Iowa, who I think is pretty underseeded. So I think that whole right side of the bracket is pretty wide open. I think any one of those 1s or 2s, or even Iowa State, could come out there. if I had to say right now, I would go Gonzaga or Iowa State to get to that Final Four out of that South region, and then I would take Villanova in the East, and I think any one of those three teams could challenge Kentucky on Championship Monday.
You know, Max, you bring up Northern Iowa. I want to talk about Northern Iowa for a second because
There we go.
you know I'm going to make multiple brackets before the tournament starts, but in my first bracket, kind of just for fun, I've got Northern Iowa going pretty far. I actually have them winning it. Now we can talk about like the more joking aspects of that, but in all seriousness, I actually think Northern Iowa is going to do a little damage, and I think a lot of people are going to learn about this team. Do you kind of feel that same way? I know you thought they were maybe they were kind of underrated going into the tournament.
Yeah, I think a lot of people knew about them. I mean, this is a 30-win team. They won the Valley tournament, and in a really impressive fashion, they made up that deficit against Illinois State. I actually got a chance to see Northern Iowa in person when they played Loyola earlier in the season. Now, obviously, Loyola not a very good team, and Northern Iowa blew them out of the gym. But you kind of got to see the way they play, and for many people that haven't seen a guy like Seth Tuttle, who's a Wooden Award finalist, he's a point forward, not in the sense that he handles the ball and calls the play at the top of the key, but he'll have the point guard with the ball at the top of the key, and he'll be the one that motions the offense. They run a lot of stuff through him. And, people always talk about Greg Marshall being one of the hot commodity coaches out of the Valley. People kind of forget that Ben Jacobson did this a couple of years ago with Northern Iowa. So this is a team that's been there before. They have a history, and they're senior laden, and what they have is depth and height on that bench. So I think Northern Iowa, I think people say the 12-5 upset is always going to happen. I think Northern Iowa can get through pretty easily. And then I think they can take care of Louisville, because really when you look at Louisville hasn't been the same since they dismissed Chris Jones, leading scorer, point guard, floor general. I think Northern Iowa has a pretty good chance to wind up in that Final Four. I think they match up well with a team like Villanova or even NC State or LSU, depending on who comes out of that pod. I think they're smart, they're veteran savvy, they've got good wins on the year. I think they can make some noise.
And, would you take that as your biggest upset looking at this tournament? I know you haven't looked at the bracket as in-depth as you'd like to yet, but would you say that Northern Iowa has the most upset potential looking at these matchups?
I wouldn't even consider Northern Iowa the team that could really make an upset run. I think the team another underseeded team that I think can make another run, I think, is Wichita State. They come in as a 7th seed, and they get Indiana, who kind of teetered on the bubble before the tournament, but they get it as a 10 seed pretty safely. I think if you're Greg Marshall and you're Wichita State, this is your time to prove that Wichita State is there. You can beat Indiana, and then the next team you're going to play is Kansas. And people are saying that this isn't Bill Self's greatest team, but you know what? He's done a terrific job coaching them, indicative of them playing the hardest schedule in the country. But I think Wichita State, if they play their best game, can get by Kansas. Now, I'm not saying they could go all the way into the Final Four because they play in the same region as Kentucky, but I think Wichita State is definitely poised for another deep run in the tournament. Now, it's a couple tough games, but I have a lot of faith in Greg Marshall. He gets his guys up to play. I know they lost early in the Missouri Valley, but that might have been good. They probably learned a lot from the loss to Illinois State. Probably get a little bit more days under them to rest. We know Baker and Van Vliet are going to go get shots. They do lack the height, but I think they play smart enough basketball that they can make a couple wins and put together a run.
Well, in that same region, I know you got a lot of love for these mid-majors, but even though that this kills me to say it, but I really like Notre Dame. I think with Grant and Demetrius Jackson, familiar name for the Illini after they thought he was Illinois lean for a while, right?
He actually was, I believe.
I think they've been really pretty impressive, and to only get a 3 seed with 29 wins coming out of the ACC, I think they could pose a pretty good challenge to Kentucky just because they can score. They're able to spread out the floor. I'm not sure how much size they have, and Kentucky could definitely exploit that. But I think Notre Dame is kind of a team that I'm definitely looking for in that Midwest. What about you guys?
And yeah, Steve, I agree with you on Notre Dame. They played well in the season. They got a lot of good wins. Cherry Grant leads the ACC in assists. He's a really intriguing player. He can get his own shot. The only knock on Notre Dame I have is that Mike Bray is not really the greatest tournament coach. They haven't really had the best of postseasons in a while. And this is probably, and I wouldn't say Notre Dame came out of nowhere. It's not like they were picked at the bottom of the ACC or in the country. People knew they were on the radar, but I don't think people thought that they were going to be this good. But, I think they've gotten better. Grant, obviously, All-American, Wooden Award finalist. I question on how far they can go, and I look at that next matchup because, a lot of people knock Texas for getting in the tournament and not even having to play in the play-in game. But Texas, when they're healthy, and I know they didn't have Isaiah Taylor at the beginning of the year, but they're deep. They're a tournament team. They got a lot of big bodies. They have a lot of size. I think they're going to have an easy job getting past Butler in that 6-11 game. I wouldn't be surprised if they could put together a run, and I think they'll give Notre Dame all they can handle in that third-round game.
Max, when people are filling out brackets, there's always a game or two that sort of, gets really tough to kind of pick. And when I was going over mine, one of the harder ones, just because it's just sort of a strange game to me, is this Oklahoma State-Oregon game.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm having a hard time because on one hand you see Oregon, who I don't think Oregon is really anything that special. But then you have Oklahoma State 18-13. I know that there's some obviously quality wins in there. But what can you tell me about this game? Because this one to me is just I don't like anything about picking this one.
Yeah, the 8-9 matches. It's literally a toss-up. But I tweeted this a couple days ago. You got to remember that Illinois played Oregon in that United Center game early in the season, and really after that game, both teams really went in different directions. And Joseph Young got his game together. He Pac-12 Player of the Year, led the conference in scoring. Really can get his own shot, and then we all know what happened to Illinois, the Ray Rice injury, then suspension, the Aaron Cosby dismissal, and they ended up missing the tournament now in the NIT. But I think Oregon, there's going to be a lot of offense in that game and not a lot of defense. We know that Joseph Young can score. Oregon's a very offensive-minded team. And on the other side, Oklahoma State, LeBron Nash is a senior who really put the team on his back this year. And I know they're only 18-13, but, you play in the Big 12, you're going to play a top team almost every night. But whether is that going to weigh on them? I know they were an early exit out of the tournament, from the Big 12 tournament. I just think Oregon put it together at the right time. They made it all the way to the Pac-12 tournament final. Got blown out by Arizona, but Arizona's a whole different animal. But I think looking out of that, I think Oregon, they have enough guys that can score the ball, and I just don't think that Oklahoma State has enough bodies to really go with them. So I would probably take the Ducks in that matchup.
Another one that that I keep hearing about is this SF Austin Utah game, and
you're big on Utah, right?
Exactly.
You've been riding Utah for a while.
Since the preseason, I've had faith in Utah.
I do remember.
Yeah. Not only do I have them going past SF Austin, I actually have them all the way to the Elite Eight, past Duke. Kind of tying a little bit into some of those knocks you had against Duke. Do you think that Utah is a team capable of actually making it that far against teams like Duke?
I think DeLon Wright is a guy that can carry Utah pretty far. But you got to remember, Stephen F. Austin, 12 seed last year, beat VCU in the first round, almost got to the Sweet 16, and they literally returned their entire team. Now, do I think that they're going to beat Utah? I probably don't think so. I think Utah, once they really opened me up at the beginning of the year when they beat Wichita State at home, and I've kind of been following them since. DeLon Wright, everyone knows about him. But you got to look at guys like Pirtle and Loveridge. They have a bunch of guys on that team that can get their own shot. Now, I'm not saying they're the most offensively gifted team in the Pac-12 or in their region. They play a lot of their games in the 50s and sometimes even in the 40s. We've seen them in a lot of low-scoring games. I think Utah can clamp down defensively, and I think they can beat Stephen F. Austin. And it would obviously it would set back basketball about 20 years if they would meet a team like Georgetown in that second round in that 5-4 matchup, because Georgetown plays a slow type of basketball, that Princeton style. I think either one of those teams can come out of there and deal with Duke. I probably think Utah would be more suited for that because they're a little bit more veteran-laden with a couple more seniors and probably more experienced backcourt.
Well, Max, we're running a little low on time here, but I think we're going to go around the room here with everyone's Final Four pick, and then ultimately who you got winning the championship. So, Max, you want to lead us off?
Sure. I'll actually be covering the Final Four for 120 Sports, so I'll be in Indy in a couple weeks.
Very jealous.
Yeah, jealous.
No-brainer. Kentucky comes out. of the Midwest. Honestly, being a Big Ten guy, I'd love to see Wisconsin there for some Big Ten bias. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Arizona's going to get that revenge. So Arizona comes out on the West. Right now, it's hard. I've watched a lot of Iowa State, and I think that they're a very intriguing team. So I'll take Iowa State out of the South, and out of the East, it's really a toss-up. But you know what? I saw Villanova crush Illinois in the second half. Illinois hung with them for about 22 minutes, and then Villanova just said, not anymore. They have a ton of guards. They're deep. They have a big man in Daniel Ochefu, who not many people have watched or know about in the country. I think they can give Virginia all they can handle. They have enough guys that can score on that pack line defense. So I think Villanova comes out. But, again, it's pretty much, you'd be crazy to say anyone but Kentucky. I think Arizona can give them a run in that semifinals, but that's the only really threat I think they have. So I'll go Kentucky.
All right. I'm pretty similar, actually, to I think kind of what we had, except for Sam, who went off the rails a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think Kentucky, no brainer. I have them winning it all. Out of the West, I like Wisconsin. I think this team has more offense than Bo Ryan normally has. They don't have to rely on using 33 seconds on the shot clock nearly as much. I like Wisconsin out of the West. I like Virginia in the East, just because I'm a sick puppy and I like watching defense because I've watched too many of Thibodeau's Bulls. I like Virginia out East. And then, yeah, I like Iowa State as well. The only red flag I have with them is that they take whole halves off at a time, but then they've had a couple pretty great comebacks. They've been playing pretty well lately. But yeah, ultimately I don't think anyone is beating Kentucky this season. And what 40-0 would be their title with that. So JJ, what you got?
I think I'm going to stay pretty close to that plan. I do have Wisconsin coming out though. I have Kentucky obviously taking it all, but I have Wisconsin going up against Kentucky in the Final Four. And then on the other side, I'm kind of with Max here, and I'm putting some faith in Nova because, like we both saw, in that I didn't get to see them live in Madison Square Garden, but watching Villanova crush Illinois, I like Nova. And then down low, I've got Iowa State overcoming Nova actually, and going on to face Kentucky in the championship. Ultimately,
With Kentucky.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's hear Sam's wild bracket of. Did you have a dartboard and you just kind of hit random teams, or how did this go?
I like Tuttle. I like this Tuttle guy from Northern Iowa. This is what I've got. I've got Kentucky, Arizona, and then Northern Iowa and SMU. So I mean, I guess that's kind of a more surprise. I love Nick Moore.
Larry Brown.
I love Nick Moore.
It all comes back to ISU with you.
Yeah, exactly. That is shining through. But then I've got Kentucky actually playing Northern Iowa in the championship game, and then of course Seth Tuttle and the boys rallying to victory and taking down the Wildcats. But seriously, I fill out a bracket like this more so just because it's kind of ridiculous, but also it just kind of makes it a little bit more fun to watch and just think maybe not all the. And of course I'll make a more realistic bracket down the road maybe, but we'll see. I've got those Northern Iowa that championship right there.
And you tried to chastise me for having a normal bracket. Earlier today.
No, I just said it was maybe a little boring.
Because I like teams.
Well, Max, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. We've got to have you on soon. I guess either talking an Illinois NIT championship or talking with when the Bulls are cutting the net off.
Do they have the NBA?
I don't know if they do, but if they do, when the Bulls win the NBA championship, we'll have you on as well. Well, Max, thank you so much for coming on. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me. Always good to listen to you guys.
That's it. That was Max Tane, former great guy, really funny guy, great, knows his stuff, knows everything about everything, yeah, and he's very knowledgeable about all this stuff, and clearly when you got somebody like me hosting that picks Northern Iowa, well, it kind of shows exactly how much I may or may not know about college basketball. But so again, thank you to Max for coming on. We're going to take a very short break, and when we return, we're going to talk some NBA.
Hi, this is Champaign Mayor Don Gerard, and I'm concerned about 4 things, and that would be police, fire, public works, and Illini sports. That's why I tune into Illini Drive at 6 p.m. on Mondays on WPGU 1071 FM.
Hello and welcome. Welcome back to Illini Drive on WPGU 1071. I'm Sam Sherman, your host for today. We always have a different host here. Sometimes it's
We like
Steve.
to keep it fresh.
Sometimes, actually recently, JJ, you took the helm.
Try my hand at it, yeah.
One day, maybe Jeff. Maybe you'll be the host.
Maybe.
That'd be a great day. That'd be a great day.
And Torrance, you could maybe take the helm one day as well. We'll see. We've still got a lot of shows to give you, but today we got this show. Today we talked about some, Illini basketball and how, they're going to be fitting into the NIT. We thank you again to Max Tane, former Illini Drive host and now working over at 120 Sports in Chicago. Very cool phone application. I recommend everybody gets that. If you're a sports fan, it's definitely a must. But now we're going to be talking about the NBA, and I want to kick it off with some Bulls talk. The Bulls currently are playing without, as many people know, Derrick Rose. Yeah, Derrick. Name a Bull they're probably not playing. It's no Derrick, no Jimmy, no Taj. Am I missing anybody?
I don't know.
And everyone's hurt.
Kirk Heinrich is playing.
Yeah,
that's not great.
Yeah,
Heinrich Soul is in it again.
Yeah. So the Bulls are sort of just trying to keep their heads above water. I mean, they're still. It's not like there's any worries about playoff hopes or anything. They're very solidly in that, but in terms of what kind of damage they can do, I think that's going to be a question.
I think, this team with Thibodeau, we've seen, unless we're going back to, the Rose MVP season, I think they're one of the only teams that doesn't have a playoff gear. And so we've seen the past 2 years where they've kind of played over their potential and gotten a better seed than that maybe they deserve, but once they play in the playoffs, they have nothing more to give. And I think right now, with the injuries and them being so short, I mean, they're on a skid right now. They've lost 5 of 6. Their one win was in overtime against Philly, a team actively trying to lose games. So, I mean, ultimately they need to get healthy. I think Taj should be coming back pretty soon. Butler and Rose still a couple weeks away, but I mean, yeah, it's just disappointing as far as playoffs go because you have so much hope for most of the season, and then these injuries again just kind of derailing things right at the worst times.
I was looking up stuff about Taj, trying to see when he's back because I feel like the injuries just kind of revolve around circles, and I have no idea on any of the timetables. But he has started playing one-on-one again, so I do look forward to him coming back. Mm-hmm. But yeah, looking forward to the playoffs. I always compare everything to the Bears because my life seems to revolve around the tragedy that is.
Yeah.
But, for the years that Cutler was consistently injured, it kind of started to feel that way with the Bulls, too, where, you feel good, and then all of a sudden one injury, and you're just looking at it from a totally different way.
Yeah, the only positive that has come from, not even a positive, silver lining, I'll say, of the injuries has been Nikola Mirotic has been phenomenal recently. I mean, he's not, necessarily an efficient player. He's not going to shoot, great percentages, but at the end of games, he gets buckets, he stretches the floor, and really he has no fear out there and to willing go shoot and create his own shot, which is something they desperately need.
I love Mirotic because you like you said, you kind of watch him go in. He's not efficient by any means, at least throughout the entirety of a game. But when the fourth quarter comes around, you just suddenly you look at that final stat line. You're like, when did he score 25?
Yeah.
Or it's like suddenly he starts to kind of pour in the buckets. But he's played professional basketball for a pretty long time.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't in the NBA. So I mean, he's a good player, and I think he's gonna have an impact. He is having that impact already, but of course going forward as well. But it's sort of just you kind of we've all followed the Bulls long enough in the last in the Derrick Rose era to know that it's hard to just get too excited about anything, especially because let's look at another team in the East for a second, in the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah.
The team that
they're rolling right now.
Yeah, a team that for earlier in the year they weren't really flowing together. It wasn't really looking all that great. I mean, that at some point they were going to click. With all that talent, it's gonna click. And oh boy, have they been starting to click.
I mean, yeah, Kyrie is on another level right now. I don't know if you guys saw that game against
That was
the
the
Spurs.
best game of the year so far.
I mean, that was phenomenal.
San Antonio,
yeah,
right?
he
How many
was
did he score?
57.
And it's one thing to score 57, which is an incredible feat no matter how you do it. But the shots he was hitting and just, he was, as they say, he was shooting unconsciously. It was like, but it was, pretty incredible to watch a feat like that.
He was in like all-star game mode.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my critique of Kyrie is he hasn't played a meaningful game of basketball yet in his career, but he's great during the all-star game, so that's cool. But yeah, I mean, if he's going, LeBron will be ready. I mean, he's just pacing himself for the playoffs, and then obviously Love if they get any sort of contributions out of him.
I say he's the X factor of that team in the playoffs because he just doesn't fit. You can just tell how he's playing. He doesn't fit with that team.
I feel like at times he just kind of turns into, Steve Novak. Just like go stand in the corner. And when he was in Minnesota, I mean, he's a 20-12 guy.
Yeah.
And so he can't be happy. And with some of the things he said, he's not happy. But there's only one basketball.
He says he's still like they had an interview with him. He said something about I'm still a post player. He don't really like the term stretch.
Like he hasn't posted up.
You're not hurt.
Post up, Kevin. Then you can call yourself.
Exactly.
I mean, and it'll be. I'm curious to see how these guys are going to perform come playoff time because you've got LeBron, who his playoff resume. All you have to do is just look a few years back and a couple years back, and that's spoken for. But then you go to these other guys like Love or Kyrie, and they don't have that experience. And
does anyone on that roster have playoff experience other than LeBron?
They have Verajao, but he's out.
Verajau's out.
Yeah, Verajao.
Mozgov, no. I mean,
Sean
Love,
Marion
no.
ever had some playoff tip?
No,
he definitely has.
They're fourth starters in flux. It's sometimes a Deladova. They dust off Mike Miller every once in a while.
Oh my God! He's
Sean Marion. I mean, I don't know. Their fifth starter is kind of a question mark.
If Deladova contributes anything, it's like incredible. But I guess he does maybe. I don't know.
St. Mary's guy.
Yeah, St. Mary's guy. No, I mean it's going to be. They're just a team that they're. It's all about, like I said before, it's not what you do, but it's when you're doing. I mean, they're locking in at the exact right time now, and they're going to be really hotter than anyone probably going into the playoffs. Whereas the Bulls, who knows? Because when these guys come back, it's going to be hard to sort of gauge exactly where they're going to be because that chemistry has kind of been blown up.
And it seems like they never peak at the right time. They run out of gas, and that really just goes back to Tom Thibodeau. You would think. I mean, Pau Gasol is very old. Like he's averaging like 36 minutes a game or something. Like he should not be averaging those kind of minutes. Joakim Noah with the plantar fasciitis and the surgically repaired knee has been playing too much. Obviously, Jimmy Butler plays 49 minutes a game whenever he's in the game. I mean, if they have another early round exit, I mean, can you substantiate keeping Tibbs on?
Well, and what I also want to know is if these guys can come back and make some noise, late little push. Is it enough to keep his job? I know his relations with front offices are not good.
Yeah, we brought on Cody Westerland here to talk, and there's a very real possibility that Thibodeau, despite never having a losing record or really missing out on the playoffs, could very well not be the Bulls coach next year.
I want to know how well do they have to do for Tibbs to keep his job?
I think if they get to the second round and lose to an Atlanta or a Cleveland, I think you keep him, but I'm more on the Tibbs side. Maybe it's beyond repair, and they just need to change. But if you lose in the first round, if you lose to, depending on the seeding how it work out, if it's a Washington who is falling off a cliff, or Milwaukee who's a couple years away, if you lose in the first round, I mean I gotta think Gar and Pax are gonna pull the plug on this thing.
I mean, I'm also a little bit on the side of Tibbs here, simply because he's one of the best coaches in the NBA, and I know that he's got issues in terms of the very documented issues with the front office due to the fact that he overplays guys and he plays guys when they shouldn't be playing, all that kind of stuff. But it's still hard to who are you going to replace him with? Who's going to be? And maybe there's a guy out there. I don't know.
That's what I was thinking,
yeah, but when you have that coach,
right?
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to justify getting rid of him unless, like you said, you have that first round exit when it's just like, well, you know what, at the very least you got. And so to keep him, I think with where the front office is probably right now, I think that they want to see. I think they want to see him make a pretty deep run, and just to show
Conference finals.
Oh
That's
yeah,
what I was thinking.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. I mean, obviously, I don't think that they're putting the pressure of needing to get championship or winning the championship or anything like that. That's extremely difficult, especially when you look at the teams out west. That would have been hard even with a totally healthy, Bulls team for the entire season. But yeah, so I hope that they can figure something out and he doesn't have to go just for the sake of wanting to watch a Bulls team that is good, because they'll be good. They'll be good as long as Tibbs is the coach. The question is, can they, go to higher up?
And the past couple of years, it's almost like they're in Joe Johnson, Paul Millsap, Al Horford, Atlanta. Like where they're constantly kind of a middle seed, low seed, and really no threat to win a championship, and that's kind of purgatory for the NBA. You're not getting good picks. I mean, unless you hit a gold mine like they did kind of with Jimmy Butler. But you're not getting great picks and you're not threatening for a championship. I mean, it's not really where you want to end up at.
Well, I'm certainly curious to see just when they do if they can get this team near healthy again. I mean, if they can get that chemistry back and make a little run at the end of the season.
Real quick, they only played 19 games so far with their starting five, and they only played 68 games so far. So the starters missed roughly.
And they're about 15-4 with the starters.
Yeah. Bulls basketball has actually been really enjoyable if you're an Etuan Moore fan, because he's been playing.
He's been good. Hey, he's been good. He had 12-4 last night.
I mean, it's gotten to a point where Tibbs, despite him not wanting to at all, he's playing McDermott.
Well. Yeah, that's
Doug McDermott's getting minutes, and he's not doing very much in those minutes.
Well, yeah.
He's young.
He's young. He's a rook. 2 years from now, Thibodeau will like him, or he'll cut him. That's
exactly.
The only two options.
Well, that's thanks so much for listening to Illini Drive today. For myself, Sam Sherman, joined alongside Steve Bourbon, J.J. Wilson, Torrance Sorrell, and Jeff Omer, our guys, all of our guys. See, Jeff? Our guys, as I like to say. Here on the show, we talked some Illinois basketball, some NIT, the National Invitation Tournament. We talked about some stuff that John Gross said. I'm kind of curious. He tweeted us about that quote. John Gross basically kind of going into the NIT with sort of just maybe we'll be ready, maybe we won't. And then we thanks again for Max Tane coming on, talking with us about the NCAA tournament. Max, always a great guest to have on. And then we closed out the show with some Bulls talk. Always sort of an interesting process, just because we never know what kind of lineup we're going to be seeing on any given night.
Yeah, I mean,
each one. I want him to start. But that's just
whoa, pump the brakes.
Hot takes, save them for the end of the show.
Yeah.
Once again, thanks so much for listening into Illini Drive. Make sure, if you want to, tune into the Illinois basketball game tomorrow night when they were taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide.
We got Bama.
Tuscaloosa. They got Bama. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Not a place I'd want to be, but Illinois has no choice. They're going to play them in the NIT. Thanks again, listening, Illini Drive. We will see you next Monday.